Thank you for attending this final session of the 2020 RUD Adoption Research Program Conference, Adopted Adults, Connections Across Generations. I was so honored to be invited by Dr. Hal Grodovan to serve as the inaugural program chair for this conference, which was supposed to be held in person a year ago, last April 2020, but we all know what happened a year ago, last spring. So for those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Holly Mcginnis. I am an assistant professor at Virginia Commonwealth University School of Social Work. I am an adoption scholar whose work focuses on improving outcomes across the lifespan for youth and adults who have been adopted. I'm also known as Lee Hwa Young, that is my Korean birth name. I was adopted from South Korea and was raised in a white transracial family in a good Irish Catholic Mcginnis home in the suburbs of New York City. In 1996, I started a group for internationally adopted adults named Also Known As in New York. And that really launched my career as a social worker who was trained in child and adolescent mental health, and then work as a policy director at the Donaldson Adoption Institute before pursuing my doctorate in social work. As we all reimagined and reinvented this conference from its original in-person format, I wanted to keep some of the key themes that I saw as the cutting edge to understanding the lifelong experience of adoption. The truth is, in adoption scholarship and practice, we have not looked far beyond the horizon of early adulthood. And yet a core piece of all my work is that there is a wealth of wisdom from the lived experiences of those who have been adopted and fostered, but we don't know much about it. So like everyone who was able to adapt their work using Zoom technology, we hosted our first 3 sessions last fall, and then 3 sessions this spring. We really hope you have found these recorded sessions and the live recorded sessions stimulating and interesting. It's not the same as meeting in person. I really do hope I'll get to meet some of you in person at a future RUD conference or event. Yet I think we provided a valuable resource to our audience and supporters that now have access for free to all of these sessions on the RUD Adoption Research Program website. So as we launched this year-long virtual conference last fall, the first session focused on how adopted adults have been building community over the last 40 years with each other, and how the next generation of young adult adoptees are continuing to create these spaces, often using technology to connect, share, and support each other. This was followed by a session focused on the research on intergenerational issues in adulthood as adopted children become adults, parents themselves, and adoptive and birth parents also become grandparents. We then explored how art, specifically the documentary project Side by Side that gave adoptees a platform to speak their truths, can be healing. Then this spring, we hosted a lively discussion of adoptees and foster care alumni as authoring and reauthorizing their own narratives. How activism and advocacy become tools for adopted and formerly fostered adults to empower themselves and others to know the information that is by right theirs. In the previous session, we had scholars and adopted adult professionals educate about the use of commercial and clinical genetic testing for birth search and health information, a new technology that was not widely available even just a decade ago, yet clearly also does not eliminate the need to know and have access to one's family history. So tonight is our final session to explore a central theme of this conference, which is, what does adoption look like in adulthood? And how do practices and policies need to be changed to meet the needs of adopted individuals in adulthood? It has been always my premise that we cannot assume that our theories, models, and practices that work for adopted children and adolescents will also work in adulthood. And in fact, it's my hypothesis that much of the work for adoptees to making meaning of their adoption happens when we leave our families, make connections with communities beyond our childhoods, explore the world, fall in love, and perhaps start families of our own, that the work really begins to happen. In the best of circumstances, we can only hope our childhoods give us the foundations to do the work as adults. I'm hoping that this conference is the beginning of a continuing work to deepen our understanding of the terrain and map the life course of adoption. As I have listened to our esteemed presenters throughout these 6 sessions, I have walked away with one key observation on how to work with adoptees in adulthood, and perhaps at every developmental stage. That is this: what is truly healing is what we can name and do for ourselves. Adoptees can get entrapped in narratives of rescue that take away their agency to do, feel, and say their truths. We are often told the meaning and narrative of our surrender, our adoption, without space to know these for ourselves. This is why adoptee-only spaces can be so powerful and healing, because for the first time, an adoptee may feel like they can say what they've always wanted to say without worrying about hurting or being hurt by those who held their truth for so long. In the many adoptee-only spaces I've occupied, they're not necessarily therapeutic in design, but here the healing is not about reducing symptoms or problem behaviors. The healing is in asking the questions: what does it take for me to be whole? What does it take for me to speak my truth? This idea of wholeness and authoring and reauthorizing our adoption narratives toward wholeness can be done in so many ways. So I'm so excited that tonight's session will show how one domestic adoptee, Dr. Liz Debetta, has used her talents in education to create an experience for other adoptees to explore and migrate toward wholeness through writing. We will have Dr. Debetta provide a brief presentation of her work, and then we will watch a short video of some of the writing that was produced. And we are so thrilled that 4 of the participants will also share their experiences and insights, and are so glad that others are in our audience today, and we invite them to speak. Once again, I really want to especially thank Dr. Hal Grodevant, Rudd Family Adoption Chair of the UMass Rudd Adoption Research Program, for his unwavering support of this conference, and Amanda Moore, Events and Communications Manager, without whom we would not have had any of this virtual conference. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Jen Dolan, Program Manager of the Rudd Adoption Research Program, who will facilitate tonight's session. But before I do, just let me cover some logistics. If you have any question, please put them in the chat as they come up. If we don't get to answer all of your questions by 8 p.m., we will really try to continue to record responses from our speakers and post them when the recording goes up. And with that, I give the baton to Jen Dolan.
Thank you, Holly. That was just wonderful. And as you all can imagine, it's been such a joy and a treasure to work with Holly this past year. I really don't know what we would have done without her. And I know Amanda and I have just so enjoyed having the opportunity to get to know you, to work with you. It's just been wonderful. And then to add into this mix, Dr. Liz Debetta, like, wow. I actually, the first time that as Holly said, I'm the program manager with the Rudd Adoption Research Program. So I have a variety of different roles that I do. And one is, helping with the conference. And I love the work that I do. I value it. And this evening is just a prime example of why the work that I do is just so important to me. It's been just amazing, the process of pulling together this talk for you this evening. It's been wonderful. So just such a great group of folks to work with. And I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Liz Debetta. I first met her a couple of years ago when she came to UMass and participated in our Summer Adoption Research Institute. And I knew right away she was a kindred spirit. She's just so easy and wonderful to work with. I have so much respect for her passion and her commitment. So I am going to miss, we've been meeting weekly, and I'm really going to miss our weekly sessions. But let me offer to you a more formal bio. Dr. Debetta is an interdisciplinary scholar, activist, artist, and her work is grounded in creativity and social justice and focuses on creating cultural change within individuals and communities that have been marginalized and oppressed. Using storytelling and narrative techniques, Liz invites others to create space for empathy and begin healing individual and collective trauma around issues of race, gender, sexuality, disability, ethnicity, and other intersections of identity that are misunderstood or misrepresented in the dominant culture. She's interested in performance-based poetry and narrative writing for healing and social change from a feminist perspective within the areas of adoption culture and reproductive justice as a way of disrupting dominant narratives and shifting paradigms for adoptees and first mothers. Her writing has been published in dearadoption.com, severanceMag.com, and in Me Too, essays about why this happened, what it means, and how to make sure it never happens again. Liz is a facilitator of Adoptees Connect in Salt Lake City. She is currently researching the benefits of creative writing to heal adoptee trauma and has a book project in the works, which I am very excited about. I've followed Liz for a while, and I'm just always so impressed and moved by her work. And as I said, by her commitment and her passion to the adoptee community. So as Holly mentioned, we are honored to have some of the participants who were involved in the writing sessions with Liz here with us to talk about their experiences. So for now, I'm just going to ask that they briefly introduce themselves. And we will start with Erica.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with you tonight. My name is Erica Currievani. I am an Ohio-born domestic adoptee, and I was born during the closed records era in 1969. I advocated for 25 years to have my records open, and at age 45, I actually finally received the right to my original birth certificate, which brought me tremendous healing and wholeness.
Thank you. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Hinton. I'm a 45-year-old domestic infant adoptee raised in South Dakota. I'm currently in, reunion with biological family. Thank you all for giving us this opportunity to share tonight.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing with us. Tawny?
Yeah, I'm Tawny Johnston. So glad to be here. I live in Olympia, Washington. I'm 62. Mine was a domestic closed adoption. Being born to a 22-year-old college couple who didn't want me really messed me up, and I needed to process it, but I couldn't bring it up with my parents. That might mess them up too. Though I run into patches when I feel stuck or even like I'm going backwards, I find that I'm driven and very motivated to staying open to finding that inner peace I feel I deserve.
Great. Thank you so much. You can already tell just how special this evening is going to be. Katie?
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie. I was born, adopted, and raised in Southern California. I was a domestic adoptee, adopted at 4 days old. Although I'm pretty white and my adoptive parents are white, my biological family is also Japanese. So I don't know how transracial really fits in there, but there's an element of that, I suppose. And I grew up with 2 adopted brothers and have many, many, many more biological siblings. I am in reunion with some of my family, my birth family, as of about 4 years ago. Thank you all for this opportunity to speak. I really appreciate it.
You're all touching my heart. All right, Liz, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jen. And thank you to, before I begin, I want to thank from the bottom of my heart everyone at Rudd, Dr. Hal Gordevant, who brought me into this experience a couple of summers ago. And that has made me part of the Rudd family, I feel. And thank you to Jen and Amanda and Holly for their incredible support in the process of building what you all are going to witness tonight, and supporting me and my vision for what this last session was going to be like. And thank you everyone who's here from around the globe. One of our participants, Hal, is here from Israel, and it's like 2 a.m. So I'm happy that you're here, but also sad it's the middle of the night for you, but you're a rock star. So my name is Liz Debetta, and I am also a domestic infant adoption, closed records in 1977. And that's kind of how I come into this work, right? Obviously lived experience. And I started writing when I was 14 because I had a lot of really big feelings that I didn't know what else to do with it. I had a really smart teacher who knew that I was going through some stuff and suggested I start writing poems. And of course, at 14, I thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. I was like, no, I'm not writing poems. What are you kidding me? And then he shared a poem that he had written with me and told me the story behind it. And I was profoundly moved. I thought, wow, okay, well, maybe this isn't such a dumb idea. So I bought a little flowered notebook and I started writing. And it was writing that I did for myself. It was never writing that I shared with anyone. And it stayed in, and I have a stack of journals, and over the years, my mom has, periodically, she gets me a new one, and I never finished them. And I think there's something important about that, right? It's always unfinished, and there's always more to write, more to say, and more to explore. But I have this stack of journals, and when I was working on my dissertation, I went back to all of my early writing, and I saw very clearly a pattern. I basically, the idea that I got was that, I was actually writing my future because I could go back to all of those early poems and see all of my grief and all of my pain and all of my confusion, the way that trauma was expressing itself in images and tone and mood in those poems. And I was like, wow, this is something, there's something here. And so I got really interested in the way that writing can be used as a tool for healing. And of course, there's a whole field of study connected to that I'm going to talk a little bit about in a few minutes, give everyone some information. And I think actually Amanda's got a couple of documents that she's going to pop in the chat so that you can download. I've opted to not do a PowerPoint for the sake of keeping this evening in a really conversational way. I was really excited to be able to come here and just talk with everybody so I can see all of your faces, at least one screen, which is wonderful, instead of getting stuck in a PowerPoint. So, as Jen said, my work is also very deeply connected to social justice. And as part of the adoptee community and as part of my activism, it's really important for me to find ways to elevate adoptee voices. And writing and sharing stories is one way. So I am going to share one quick slide because I want to explain the social justice framework to you that we sort of worked with a little bit. I hope you all can you all see this? Great. My computer's being a little funky tonight. And this is also in the chat for you, so you can download this document so that you have it. But one of the things that's really important when we think about social change is the center of this circle or this wheel, however you want to think about it, which is equity, liberty, justice, and solidarity, right? And so when we think about adoptee spaces or the culture of adoption, we're looking at those 4 points as really important, right? We're looking to create equity in terms of laws and policies that have been unequitable for so long. We're looking at the liberation of a system that has kept secrets and silences in favor of truths. So that's a personal liberation and then a cultural liberation that we're working towards. It's also obviously justice oriented, right? Because when adoptee rights become human rights, we have access to knowledge that has been denied to us. And that's an important form of justice that we all deserve. And of course, then there's a solidarity building, which happens, as Holly said, when we're in adoptee only spaces. There's an incredible amount of solidarity that we build together, because we realize that we're no longer alone, and our experiences are shared experiences, even though our circumstances may be different. And so then within this work of creating equity, liberty, justice, and solidarity, we all have roles in this ecosystem. And so it's important to know, to sort of own the roles that we have. And so for me, I'm a healer, a storyteller, and a guide. This work is healing work. It's work around telling stories, my own stories, giving people space to tell their stories, guiding people through the process of telling their story in order to heal. But I also, in looking at this all again, as I was preparing to talk to you all tonight, I realized that in addition to being a healer, a storyteller, and a guide, I'm also a disruptor. And that's really important, because we've got lots of uncomfortable situations that come up in adoption land, connected to all of the secrets and silences. And there's a lot of status quos that have been in place for so long. And so when we create space for adoptee voices to be heard and to be privileged, we start to disrupt those status quos and raise awareness. And that's what tonight is about, looking at how this work is both healing and empowering, and a move towards social change. So I'm going to talk a little bit about writing for healing. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that for now. So a little bit of background about writing for healing, and I'm going to do this super fast. So kind of, what is it? Why and how did we do it in this group? Where did this idea come from? So again, I told you I started writing a long time ago, and then started, as part of my dissertation work, looking at my writing and realizing that there was something important there. There was something that was going on in the writing, and that I could look at it for clues. And then as I continued to write, I've been able to compare writing from different points in my life and see the healing happening as it plays out in the shift in the language that and the imagery that has appeared in my own poetry and narrative writing. And so in November, I gave a presentation about my own writing as a way of for a conference whose theme was migrations, and how we can use poetry to migrate trauma. And I used myself as the example. And so from that, I said, what would happen if we put together a group of adult adoptees, intergenerational, from their 20s through their 60s, and got them writing. And for some folks that participated, it was the first time that they started writing about their adoption and about their feelings. And so some of the theory around this comes from the early work of Janelle Sexton and James Pennebaker, and also James Pennebaker and oh my God, I can't think of the first name, Pennebaker and Chung. So they were sort of working around the same time, and they explored the way that expressive writing about trauma can have benefits to both mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And so they studied groups of college students. One group was just writing without, just to write. And then another group was writing specifically about traumatic experiences. And they were writing, 20 minutes a day, 4 days a week over the course of 3 months. And they measured from the beginning, where they were in terms of like health and mental and physical health and emotional health. And then they measured again at the end of the 3 months. And then they measured again 6 months later. And they saw that the group that had been consistently writing specifically about trauma and processing it were healthier. They had better mental health outcomes. They were physically healthier. They were visiting the doctor less, getting less, illnesses and things like that. There were some connected theories then that sort of I have come to rely a lot on in my own work. And this is all in the handout that I've provided for you all, because I didn't have a lot of time to talk tonight, so I didn't want to get like too bogged down. But Gregory Orr writes about poetry as survival, and he says that when we translate our crisis into language, that's when the transformation occurs. And that's been a really powerful idea for me in all of this work, is recognizing that in my own experience, I've been able to, take the crisis and translate it into language and create order for myself. And similarly, Kathleen Connolly Baker and Nicholas Mazza write about the benefits of using poetry as a way of expressing trauma in order to make sense of it, and then it can help individuals have better health outcomes. Louise DeSalvo also is another really good resource. And she says that, it's not just about the writing that we do, but it's about how the writing becomes a form of public testimony in a way that's different than therapy. So it runs parallel to therapy, because when we write and then we express or share what we've written, it becomes a form of public testimony, and that in and of itself is healing, which is a companion idea to something that comes out of Sophia Richmond's work on creative transformation, where she talks about how when we create a container, right? So whether it's the poem or a piece of art or a piece of music or a piece of narrative expressive writing, that's the container for whatever it is we're going through. And then when we speak that poem or share that story or share that piece of artwork with an audience, we have witnesses, and that's an additional way that we begin to heal, by creating space for other people to hold that with us. And so, in my own theory about all of this, and it's something I'm still thinking a lot about, but I think that there's something about subconscious imagery that comes up in the writing that adoptees in particular do. And it's something that I see in my own work, and I've seen it in the work over the past 7 weeks with this group. And so remember that I said that, because it might be a big deal someday. But I feel like it's, there are things that we're not aware of, but when we put pen to paper and use a specific tool like poetry to express, the images that come up can tell us something important about what we need to heal and feel whole. So that's a little bit about that. And I know that I am a little bit over my intended 10 minutes, so really fast. I want to mention the concept of reflective resonance, which is something that occurred to me as really important. It's a thing that adoptees do instinctively when we are together in community, because of our shared experience. So reflective resonance is basically learning to listen with empathy, creating space to listen with empathy. And so when someone is sharing a story about a personal experience, in this case, maybe something that's traumatic or deeply troubling, we want to be sure that we are listening reflectively and openly, instead of listening to respond, which is what many of us are kind of trained to do, right? We're trained to oh, okay, now I've got to respond to this. Instead, we want to take it in, because what happens, so an example would be if I share something about my experience with my partner or somebody that I love and care about and trust in my life, and instead of listening and saying, oh, so what I'm hearing you say is, or what I think you're saying is, or it sounds like you're saying that this is really painful or that this happened. If those people instead say, oh, well, it's not that bad. You know what? Let me tell you about the time that's the opposite of what we want. And it occurred to me that one of the challenges in listening to adoptees is there's a lack of reflective resonance happening. So I wanted to make sure that I talked a little bit about that with everyone, and I put a little graphic on the handout so that you have that if you wanted to refer to it. But just remember, and it's not just adoptees, it's any time we're dealing with a marginalized group of individuals, we need to really be careful about the ways that we listen and respond. Because it takes courage and bravery and a lot of inner strength to share these kinds of painful truths, which is why this work is so powerful. And so we're going to show you a brief video that is about 15 minutes long. It's about half the length of the full video. You do have access to both of those, but we wanted, in the interest of time, to kind of give you everyone's voice briefly, and then encourage you, if you have not watched the full video, to go back and do that afterwards. And I was just going to share a quick poem that I think encompasses all of the themes that came up over the 7 weeks that we worked and wrote and laughed and cried together. And it's called Wholeness. I am parts of a whole, wholly partitioned into pieces, puzzling to myself as I struggle to break free, to understand, to heal. Wholeness feels holy to me, a way to sanctify, solidify, and seal my parts into place. No longer at war with myself, I am open to peace, practicing patience, pouring love into myself and others. No longer afraid of what I can't see. The dark has its companion in light. Both can exist together. Sometimes shadows show depth, contouring the colors of experience that illuminate the spaces in between, blending fear with hope, holding space for growth. The child is no longer alone. She has you.
You have a role to play, and you're trying so hard to do it. I see you. I see you trying. But your fear gets in the way. I know you're still afraid of something you can't name. If someone asked you right now what your biggest fears are, you would say lions and poison ivy. These fears you can name, and people understand them. You are so afraid of being bad and getting in trouble, but this other fear is worse. This is not one of the kinds of fears the grown-ups understand, not like lions or the dark. Even if you don't have the right words, you show them what you are afraid of. It's not your fault that they don't see. There's nothing charming about losing yourself in someone else's idea of who you should be, who they need you to be for the sake of their own sense of self. But we're finding ourselves. We're finding the words we need and naming the fears we couldn't name before. I love you.
and I see you. Thank you.
Unshrouding the shame. I am not the mistakes that I have made. I am not a mistake. I am not something that needs to be hidden away because I make people uncomfortable. Why does this idea cut to the core of who I am? Why are we in a world where my mother needed a contract with a man to legitimize me? Why does the woman suffer? I want to believe that I am light, but the stories of my life are lies because I was the lie living it. My name is a lie, an actor playing a part in someone else's family. Did everything that happened to me before I came out of the fog really happen? Now that I've seen my face reflected in my father, I recognize myself. For the first time in 50 years, I can see my own face. As I heal, I feel real. And I wonder if anything before now is real. And I'm ready to remove the shroud of shame that was placed on my shoulders at birth.
My story has become a cover that I use to project the nice and palatable things, the things that others can stomach to hear. It's become pure entertainment where I take the listeners through the winding peaks and valleys of adoption while avoiding talking about the deep caverns and canyons that have violently torn me apart. The more exciting that I make it, the less they will show me pity or feel bad for me. I wrap it in laughter and tie it in a pretty bow. I want them to be entertained and distracted so that they don't notice that there is a crying baby who doesn't understand the legal system or what an adoptive parent even is. That there is a baby who is wondering if they even exist because there are so few people who can attest to their birth. That this baby grew up into an adult who is perpetually lost because my 5 senses were developed and curated in an environment that I no longer have access to. Another part fights back against the shame. Had I known, it says, what life would be like now, then I would have fought and fought and fought like hell. I would have held that umbilical cord for dear life. I would have emerged into this world screaming, don't choose to give me up. Don't choose for our beginning to be our ending. Don't choose for our first hello to really be our last goodbye. Choose me, choose me, choose me.
This is my attempt to put into words something that I go through that's hard. My half-brother, Charles, who lives across the country, texts with me on WhatsApp a few times a month. WhatsApp messages don't show up on his mother's phone bill, which is a good thing, because she believes adoptees are trouble so much that she prevents her partner, my biological dad, from having any relationship with me. A genealogist, no less, she acknowledges I'm related to his moms, but we're all supposed to pretend my father doesn't know I exist. He goes along with this charade, even though he stole away to me once. Once in a while, Charles texts me a photo from our dad. Once in a blue moon, his biological parent of mine mails me a letter that makes me feel so at home and so comforted that I deeply crave more, kind of like dark chocolate covered moments, which I can't keep in the house. A birthday card and small present I'd sent to Dad's secret P.O. box the month before had gone unanswered this year. How could it be? I'd measured every word, every action. With no better answer in the end, I join in the silence. I plan just leave him alone from now on. The adults involved in my adoption chose sealed secrets as their preference, which is the way it continued to be carried out for decades to come. I just demand to know, why is it taking so long to matter when everyone's agreeing that they know what is right and true and best for everyone else? That it's the adoptee who stands at the center of this equation. I'm not here alone. For that, I'm grateful. So much richer for my fellow adoptees. Expressions shared through talking and writings, but also through drawings, songs, and poetry give me solace and hope.
Adoptee and Healing, Chapter 1.
Hear now the voice of one American adoptee who spent a lifetime searching for my identity. It took 45 years to find my first family. After failing through court petitions, private eyes, and the adoption registry. My original birth certificate, which had been denied to me, was unsealed after 25 years of advocate lobbying. It took decades to convince legislators that sealed records was a travesty and to explain the devastation of being a biological amputee. Why do we have to fight for the human right of knowing how we came to be? Our first chapter should be available for each of us to read. Yet the story is the same across generation and geography, and the people that hold the power continue committing the same atrocity. When will we stop denying adoptees their legitimacy and breaking through the pervasive and intoxicating fantasy that we somehow exist in perpetual infancy, when the truth is a much more sobering reality? This journey has led to an epiphany that I must change the system that forever altered me. I'm committed to healing multi-generationally, restoring.
For decades, we have seen reunions on TV. These touching, precious moments showing an adoptee and a first mother meeting in person as adults for the first time are very moving. These tear-jerking moments are designed to hook the audience in. The anticipation of adoptees meeting the parent or parents that created them and brought the adoptees into this world is heartfelt and uplifting. When the lights and cameras are turned off, the audiences go home, or the final editing of the shows or reunion series are cut, society does not get to see what comes next. The public does not get to see the emotional upheaval that happens when reunions have been frozen for years or decades begin to surface through our consciousness. Fear, doubt, anger, guilt, shame, and rage begin to show their ugly heads. And the once beautiful and heart-touching reunion becomes shattered dreams. The effects of trauma and the primal wound take over. I believe it is possible that adoption reunions are salvageable. I believe for this to happen, both the adoptees and the first parents need to be willing to put in the time and effort to work on themselves. Sometimes I wish my reunion had turned out like the Hallmark moments I grew up watching on TV. But that would be another lie, wouldn't it? And I, for one, am tired of the lies.
Here I am. This wonderful opportunity, chance to be heard and perhaps understood. As I stand here, though, I crumble and lost for words. It's an unsurmountable task to convey 61 years of pain, sorrow, and grief into 2 minutes. Today's my birthday. I chose to work, though, so I don't have to be left alone with the trauma my body remembers of that day. So I was leaving work. The question was raised. What are you going to do tonight? Without thinking or hesitating, I blurted out, I'm going straight home and blocking the door so no harm will come to me. Listen to that statement. Happy birthday. Mother delivers a baby. Baby's me. Mother's mine. Her identity I will never know. Her embrace I will never feel. Her love I will never have. With my first breath, I am taught these valuable lessons. Everyone is a lie. Everyone will abandon me. I will never know who I am. As I was whisked away to be forgotten, abandoned, and deemed illegitimate, my survival instincts kicked in and I'm crying and screaming. Please hold me. Please love me. Please don't let me go. Please don't take me away. Please don't do this. No one has listened to me. I lay still. I fall silent. So here I am with this wonderful opportunity, a chance to be heard, perhaps understood. But what if I make too much noise? What if I ask for too much? What if I make others uncomfortable? What if I say the wrong thing? What if you don't love me? The consequences are high. Danger is imminent.
Only me in elementary and high school. I am still here. To those that made fun of how effeminate or flamboyant I was, I'm still here. To those adults that make me feel ugly or less worthy, I am still here. To my mom, who worried about my safety growing up, don't worry, Mom. I'm still here. Hear me roar as I move forward within this world, spreading light and love. Listen to me sing songs of new beginnings and bliss, embracing in the sunshine after having endured endless thunderstorms. Feel the ground vibrate as I dance towards joy and silliness, embracing all of who I was meant to be, not who I was told to be. I no longer grant you power over me. I'm still here, and I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon.
That was amazing. I feel like I need tissues. And I've listened to these twice before. And each time I listen, I am so moved. And I feel like there is so much to unpack in each story that everyone told. I just have so many questions for everyone, but I'm gonna ask the presenters a few questions, but I wonder, Liz, as people were talking, it kind of dawned on me, it might be helpful if you wouldn't mind taking like 60 seconds and just kind of giving us a framework, you know, like everybody came together, how long, did you offer prompts, did you write together, did you write on, you know, just so people understand the context.
Yeah, sure. I didn't actually get to that in my intro because I had so many other things to say. But yeah, so we met for 7 weeks. We planned on 6, and then everyone was like, we need 1 more week. And what we did was we met for 2 hours on a Saturday. And the first session was just get to know each other, you know, share our stories. And while folks were sharing their stories with the group, I took a lot of notes, and so it was a really emergent process. All of the writing prompts each week and the reflection questions were really generated out of what came up in the group. So the first week helped me generate the first set of writing prompts. So each week I sent the participants a set of prompts, a set of questions to spur some writing, and then a set of reflection questions so that they could reflect on the process as they were going through it, because that's one of the important components of using writing therapeutically to heal, is that we not only write about the trauma, but we also reflect on why we feel how we feel, right, and what's happening. And then there were some weeks where we wrote together. Sometimes I used some of my own poetry as prompts in the sessions. The first poem that I wrote that I told you all about is called "The Little Girl Inside of Me," and that we used that to generate some writing to the little people inside ourselves, which was one of probably the most challenging pieces of writing that everyone did. So hopefully that explains enough of what the process was, and we did this for 7 weeks. And I see Antoinette in the chat feeling validated. Yes, you're not alone.
Great, thank you, Liz. That was really very helpful. And that's kind of a nice segue to the first question, which is for our participants, our panelists, why is it that you decided to participate in this writing workshop? And I'm gonna first ask Erica.
Thank you, Jen. So I have 3 reasons I participated. One, I know Liz through the adoption community, and she is somebody that I trust. And I knew I could trust her with this journey that was very intimate and raw and vulnerable. Second, it was free. And I think it's important to say that because there are a lot of writing opportunities out there, but they're all financially, there's financial investment required. And while I believe and understand the importance of paying talent to facilitate this work, I also think that it's so crucial that we don't make this cost prohibitive. So, I think there's ways that we can find to underwrite these opportunities so that we can offer them for more adoptees. And this is a terrific example of how we were able to do that. And third, I would say, my own journey of healing has been so profound. And I feel like everything in my life before I found out who I was and I went through reunion is a whole different part of me than, it's like there's the BR and the AR, before reunion, after reunion. And so I'm committed to spending the rest of my life paying forward what was gifted to me and changing mindsets and heart sets and policies and practices and outcomes for this and future generations of adoptees. And I believe in writing as a crucial tool that really threads together all of those pieces for individual and collective healing.
Wow, thank you, Erica. All right, Michelle, you're up.
I wanted to participate mainly because it scared me. I shared that with Liz before. I found the writing group on Facebook and I was like, oh no, I could never do that. I'm not a writer. And I've been challenging myself this year to do things that are really scary to me. And that was it. So I joined, and I loved that we were able to come together as adoptees. Yeah, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful time together. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Michelle. Tawny?
For me personally, I really struggle to find words in general, always have, and even to know what my thoughts are. Now that I'm retired, I'm enjoying the gift of more time. And with that, writing and talking is an area of development I'm very interested to spend time with. Liz is a wonderful guide. I was excited to be included.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks for sharing with us this evening. For us on the East Coast. Katie, why did you decide you wanted to participate in the workshop?
Yeah, so it was kind of a spur of the moment decision. It was something I saw on Facebook, and without overthinking it or really putting too much thought in at all, I was just like, I need to do this. And I sent Liz an email. And I think if I had thought about it a little longer, I might have talked myself out of it. Just because, I mean, sharing your kind of not adoption story, because it's not one story, but sharing everything that's happened to you as a result of your adoptee identity, and everything you feel is already kind of vulnerable. You have to make yourself vulnerable to do that. And then on top of that, putting it into writing was a really scary kind of idea. But I was also really stuck and had tried to write about my adoption and about my feelings about adoption in the past. And it was always a couple of sentences that trailed off. And I was like, maybe this is what I need, and it was. So I'm very glad for Liz and her work and all of the people who also signed up, because it was an amazing opportunity that I highly recommend for anyone who is able to do this in the future.
Wow, I'm just so caught up in all your words. It just feels so very powerful. Can you share what the process was like for you? And Erica, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. I would say if I were to give it some adjectives to describe, I would say that it was extremely validating. to be in a community, and a cross-generational community was so powerful. And it was validating just to know that this is a body of research that is important and valued by scholars and by the Rudd Institute. So validation was number one. It was empowering to have a community of peers that are also on this complicated and complex multi-generational journey called adoption. And I found it to be extremely supportive. I feel like I made lifelong friends. And I even remember one day like racing back, and I was at a community cleanup, and Liz texted me and said, "Hey, are you coming?" I'm like, "Yes." So I'm, literally lugging trash bags, but I'm calling into Zoom because I didn't want to miss 1 week. It was that important to me to stay committed to it and to stay committed to my own journey and those of my peers and friends.
Great, thanks. That's quite a visual of you with your trash and on the phone. And Michelle, how about for you? What was the process like?
It was cathartic, actually. It led me to different places within my adoptee healing that I hadn't really been able to access before, which in turn scared me, run away from those feelings, right? And I'm not a writer. I'm more a visual artist. So for me, it was really good to be able to put those things on paper with words, and it sort of made them more true, if that makes sense. Our experiences became true, and then in community, we were able to, promote that trueness and our truth. So, thank you.
Great. Tawny?
I would say that hearing people speak from their pain, from their heart, with the same feelings I had, really got into my thoughts and into what I was talking about with my husband, and even into my dreams. It was a bigger experience than I expected. Sometimes I wrote a lot. Sometimes I just thought about what I could write. It's just been pretty intense. It was hard to say goodbye during the last Zoom meeting. I really hope we can all stay in touch.
Great, thank you. Katie?
Yeah, so I definitely want to echo kind of what everyone said in terms of it being like a validating experience, and just really encouraging. It was also tough. Like I left a lot of don't get me wrong, I was so excited to go to every meeting as well, and so happy when we got a little extra one on the end. But I left the meetings just like, oof, like feeling the heaviness in my body and sitting with it for honestly like most of those weekends. And there was an exercise we did where we were just trying to we were like listening to some things and like letting things go and writing about like our thoughts. And I remember just writing what we were letting go. And I remember just writing like, I can't let anything go right now. Like I feel so frustrated and tight and afraid of letting go of control. And just being able to say that and not feel like I was going to be judged or no one was going to think I wasn't participating in the process. That was me participating in the process. And I think that this is like one of the first times I've been able to acknowledge that, how stuck I feel, and also have that, just saying that out loud, have that move me forward in my thoughts about adoptions and my feelings and my writing and everything. So yeah, it was the difficulty of it was what made it so amazing, I think. And I'm very happy with everything.
Wow, thank you. So a lot of, I don't know, I heard fear and concern and yet you walked forward right into it. And it seemed like, from what I'm hearing, that you were walking into a group that was willing to embrace you, into a group that really understood, even though everybody's story is a little bit different, there seems like there's similarities there. And people in your writing community got it in a way that or got your identity in a way that perhaps other folks don't. So it seems like that was a very powerful group for all of you. Is there anything, what if anything, did you learn from the process? And I just want to let everybody know that our panelists, they just got these questions, a little bit before, but we were very clear that it's optional to share what you want to share. We're just so grateful for all that you have shared. So again, what, if anything, did you learn from the process? If you're, comfortable sharing that. And I guess we'll just stay with the same order. So Erica.
Well, I think you touched on one thing, Jen, is the universality of our lived experience. And I think it's both really important that we continue to do the work of kind of the segmentation of the different identities that adoptees carry, as well as the intersectionality. When I first got into this journey 6 years ago and I found my family, the first thing I did was say, oh, I want to change the laws in Michigan, even though I'm an Ohio adoptee. And I was met with resistance on that. Well, you're not a Michigan-born adoptee, so kind of hands off. And I did start a little organization called the Michigan Adoptee Collaborative, and we started a support group. And, what I have encountered is a lot more fragmentation and infighting within the adoptee community versus this collectivism and this coming together and trying to, shore up supports and find those universal moments and experiences. And I think this was a tremendous opportunity that really reminded me, probably the biggest learning is that our stories really have to be told. And there are still so many people that are going without basic human rights of knowing where they come from or citizenship. And layering it on all the different things. How do we become advocates for one another in this work? And how do we really shore this up with expertise and resources and support? And so again, I just want to thank Rudd. This has brought so much validation, and I think it's crucial work that we have to continue. And so on a personal level, for me, I'm going to be launching a healing retreat center in later this year on the shores of Lake Michigan. And I know that I have to continue with my own journey before I ever hope to offer it up, a space up for other people to come and be able to write and find their healing as well. But I think that's what it's about. We have to continue to come together and support one another. Because if not us, who? If not now, when?
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you. Michelle, how about for you? What, if anything, did you learn from the process?
Oh, wow. I learned that I'm stronger than I believed that I was, and that I am not alone. For the longest time, I guess 45 years, I've thought that I was alone in the way I felt. And the sensations in my body. Katie spoke of the heaviness. After our first session, I went and laid down and fell asleep for 4 hours. I was exhausted, but it was a happy exhaustion. Mm-hmm. I spent most of the 2.5 hours bawling, but it was quite an experience that I loved sharing with everyone. And I also learned that it's okay to be scared along this journey. It's new. So I didn't feel like I had to be perfect or, play a role. And that was really nice just to be.
Okay, thank you. Tawny.
Yeah, I have really similar thoughts. Just learning that it feels healing to have others witness me, even just describing one of my feelings of loss. I learned that it really clears and frees my mind to be able to say whatever the words are that want to come out at the moment, and to trust that no matter how they're said, I'm not going to be doubted, second guessed, thought less of, or left behind. I kind of struggled with the struggle itself, and I reaffirmed tentatively that even though this path towards wholeness is bumpy and it's rough and it's really long, that the way to a deeper, more meaningful life is through. going back now, even if I could, would be harder than pushing through to the other side. I try to convince myself. I struggle with the workload of it, though. So those are kind of personal things that I was coming to in this wonderful opportunity.
Yeah. And Katie?
I learned so much, but to try to condense it, I would say that on a personal level, I learned that a lot of the things that I was angry about, I'm sad about. And that is the emotion that I want to focus on going forward. And then in terms of the writing, I just learned how powerful writing can be, especially when it's in a group like this with these types of prompts that Liz was pulling from our own words. How powerful is that to have your own words be given to you as a prompt, and then hear, like, be able to respond to that or respond to someone else's words and have someone respond to yours and just feel so connected. And then I think the last thing that also kind of has to do with that connection and that almost immediate willingness to be vulnerable with each other is the fact that this was led by an adoptee. And I don't think this group would look even remotely the same. Like, there's a huge difference I have learned. I mean, not just from this group in general, but especially with this group, it's highlighted the fact that, like, adoption competent and adoptee, there's like no comparison there. So having Liz, who has studied this, who has devoted her life to this, facilitate this is so meaningful. And I don't think that we could have had this vulnerability with each other to not only share our thoughts and our feelings, but also the words we put on paper if it weren't for Liz and, you know, all of the wonderful people that she brought together in this group. And again, thank you to the RUD group as well for making this possible.
Well, you all are just touching my heart. I can't even begin to tell you. So what I really respect about this group, from what I've heard from all of you and what Liz has said, is that she didn't come in with a set agenda. She had some ideas, but she really wanted to get to know all of you, and, you know, talked about it being an iterative process. And so in that spirit, my understanding is that there was one of your participants, Michelle, who did some artwork. So I want to create the space for her to share a little bit about her artwork.
Thank you. I created these two pieces, one meaning hope, and the other is holding space. Within this journey, I've felt so many different things, anger, terror, sadness, and happiness. But the one thing that I really, really needed was hope, and being together with other adoptees, it gave me more of that hope that I needed. As well as, you know, we kept talking about containment and having this adoptee space with each other and for each other meant a lot to me. So the painting on the right is all about holding space, and I was hoping to convey the heaviness of that. The bowl's empty on purpose, but it's still a container that we can all create for each other through this process.
Wow, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I was kind of scrolling through who is here in our audience, and I noticed there are a few other folks who were in the group who aren't on the panel. I just wanted to create the space for them if there was anything that they wanted to share. Not, you know, don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if there are other folks who participated who want to share, now is the time. Al, from Israel. What time is it there?
Oh golly, it's 2:44 a.m. Yeah. I just want to quickly. Yes. I'm just so thankful. I wanted to be here with the group that I consider a community, and of course the great I'm grateful to Liz for putting this all together. I just want to say I'm new to this, so terminology, LDA, late discovery adoptee. I'm still getting, still acclimating to all of the terminology. I just discovered 6 months ago, so it's kind of my mind's blown. But this is a perfect space for me to start to process the feelings, and then also come to terms and acceptance with it as well, and move forward with my own healing of this. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful community and space, and I felt safe and heard. And I practiced tremendous gratitude that I saw the posts from Liz on a Facebook group, and that I found, that the universe brought me to other adoptee Facebook groups, and now I have support groups that I could just really grapple with this idea, and my life changing from what I've known, especially with my ethnicity. I was growing up learning that I'm 100% Jewish, and now I learned like I'm actually Irish and Scottish. I'm like, oh my god, I moved to Israel. What am I doing with a different ethnicity? Stop. It's okay. So I need to just continue to process that, and it's all newness. But I'm just thankful for the love and support and the place to allow me to be me. So toda rabah, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm so grateful, so grateful.
Great, thank you. And I believe the title of your piece was "I'm Still Here," and we are grateful and delighted you're here with us tonight. Okay, was there anyone else? And I can't really see, so just
I'll just say hi. Oh,
perfect.
I think Darren wanted to say hi.
Stacy.
Yeah, I just wanted, I'm Stacy. And, to echo what Erica said, I love watching all these beautiful people tonight because they have become family of mine over these last few weeks. And they have shared some of the deepest things with me that I have never shared to anyone before, or even knew how to share. Or I am one of those that I've never written for healing. This was a new process for me. Liz was amazing in guiding me and giving me, and I know all of us, the space and the clarity and all of that to be able to express ourselves. What was amazing is things that I thought I knew, I didn't know, and things I didn't know, I started to find out as I went through this. And so it was, so powerful for me, and something that I was a lot like Katie. I just sort of went, yep, I'm in, I'm doing it, without even thinking about it, because if I thought about it, I wouldn't have done it. And this was so transformative for me at a time in my life where I needed all of these beautiful, amazing, brave people to be part of my journey.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm seeing, Darren, that you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I met Liz last September in Salt Lake City. My wife and I went there. She went to BYU, so we went to see her old stomping grounds, and Liz and I had coffee one morning, and we just hit it off, and I was so grateful to see that she created this writing group, and I really enjoyed it. And just to see everyone, the first day we all talked about ourselves and our story and shared, and that's when the trust began to start building between each other, and the progression and the growth of everybody with their adoption stories and their writings was really incredible. And I'm so thankful for this group, and I'm going to miss it. I hope we can all stay in contact. And I really thank everybody for holding space for all of us, and sharing and trusting each other.
Great, thank you so much. Michelle?
Okay, like I said, I'm more of a visual artist than I am a writer, but I did finish a piece of writing that I would like to share, if that was okay.
Of course.
Okay. This is my truth. I've always known I was adopted, and within that knowing, I was told by society that I had been saved from pain and poverty by my adoptive parents. I was so lucky that someone even would take me in. I was so lucky I was not aborted. I should be grateful for everything I had because truth be told, they saved me. I was rescued from a young girl who needed to move on from her life without the burden of a baby. I was that burden. I was told story after story, she loved you so much, she gave you away. I learned that real love was leaving and abandonment. The dichotomy of being chosen and abandoned has wreaked havoc on my brain and my body. My truth is sorrow. It feels like daggers in my gut. You were abandoned. You were bought and paid for. You better be grateful. Keep your chin up. Get over it. It could be worse. My truth is anger. Anger towards those who want to cover up my feelings and truth. Anger that I wasn't allowed to feel. Or it meant that I was ungrateful. Anger for all the times I needed love, acceptance, and comfort, and it was pushed away. I was told I was too needy and too sensitive. My truth is fear. I fear being loved in the way I was taught. I do not want to be left abandoned or be too needy. Fear will forever feel like falling into an abyss. My truth is grief. Grieving an unlife that was not lived. A birth mother that is dead. Sisters I didn't know. Grief for what was denied. The lies and secrets kept only to protect them, with no concern for me. For I was a blank slate. I was meant to mimic others. Little girls are to be seen and not heard. My truth is imprinted on my bones, tissues, and organs. My body is heavy and sore and will turn on itself. Waking hours are painful and nights are often filled with terror. Slight sounds and my brain explodes. My truth is speaking up. My truth has hope. Telling you my truest thoughts and watching you stare in disbelief, or sharing my words and thoughts, wishing to find safety, finding hope and safety in community, reaching out for comfort, reaching out to reassure, and reaching out to prove I am real. My truth is evolving, and I am not burdensome. I am lovable, I deserve comfort and love, and I am evolving. Watch me fly.
You're flying all right. Well, I feel like, I just want to give everybody a big hug. Is there anyone else who is in the audience who is a participant who wants to share something?
And if not, I have a question, Jen, for the participants.
Absolutely. And then we'll open it up to Q&A, although, our time is running short.
Yes. So I was curious, because this was something that I had encouraged Liz to make the group intergenerational as much as it could be. So I was just wondering about your reflection on kind of having adoptees from 60 all the way down to, I don't know what the low end of that group was, but just share a little of that perspective, because I know in the international adoptee community, many of us started to get connected and organized when I was in my 20s, but meeting adoptees who had been adopted out of the Korean War gave me suddenly this extent of the history and the community that it wasn't even just now. So I just wanted to invite some reflection on the group dynamic, just given differences in age and experience. And anyone can say something or not.
Well, I think I mentioned that in my initial comments, that I thought the intergenerational nature of this design was really central and extremely valuable, because I think a lot of times people, again, we other, right? And so having the intergenerational dynamic brought to bear the universality of the domestic adoptee experience. And I would think also, Liz, if you had designed this to also include international adoptees, we would also find some very significant parallels around, again, the universal adoption experience. And that's where I think it's so important for us to unite and activate, because we need to keep the press on the urgency for policy and practice changes if we are going to change outcomes for this and future generations.
Thanks, Erica.
That was great. Thank you, Erica. Anybody else want to respond to that? Go ahead.
I guess I can just say, as someone probably on the younger end of the spectrum in the group, I also really enjoyed having people from all different backgrounds across gender, age, sexuality, all of it in the group, because there is such diversity in our experiences, but at the same time, so much of it boils down to these same emotions and these same fears even. And I don't know, I was just really inspired by everyone who's in the group and all of the people who have, I think that there are a lot of ways in which policies and practices around adoption have evolved a bit, but I don't think as much as we think, because it's resulted in a lot of the same, the same feelings and trauma around adoption. It was another kind of layer of feeling not alone in any sense. Knowing that everyone has felt this regardless of whether they were adopted in the 60s or they were adopted in the 90s. And at the same time, I just have so much respect for everyone who has been, navigating their adoptee journey for decades and figuring out what it looks like to be in reunion and then out of reunion and then back in reunion. And it's all really inspiring to me. So I think it was really lovely to have such a diverse group of people.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to respond? Okay, well, we have just a couple minutes, so I wonder if there's any questions from the audience. You can either raise your hand or put it in the chat.
I'm going to jump in really quick, Jen, because I did a couple of questions pop up that I wanted to address. Okay. Folks were asking about the sort of demographics of the group and how how people got involved. So this was very specifically a group of domestic adoptees, closed adoptions. For the purposes of this group, I thought it would be interesting to look at that specific experience through that lens. And so that was one criteria. And the way that people signed up, I posted on Facebook in all the different adoptee spaces that I know, and I sent it around to as many adopted people that I know. And people filled out a Google form, and I got about 45 responses, and I couldn't obviously have a group of 40, although I would have loved to. And so it became, sort of who responded first, and then also making sure, within each age category that I had a representative number of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s based on who responded. So that was sort of the starting criteria. But then everyone that did respond, I said, if you're not able to participate this time, if you're interested in future events, because I see this as the beginning of a much larger body of work. And so for those of you that are here tonight that were also expressing interest in the chat, feel free to send me an email and I will send you the form to add your information to, so that as things continue, I can keep you in the loop.
Great, thank you. All right, questions. I'm sorry, I haven't followed the chat. So maybe if you wanted to raise your hand.
And I think Anna Elisa has a question.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. So I started typing it and I was like, maybe I'll just ask. Yeah, so I was wondering, thanks for sharing about like how you did the selection process and all of that. I was wondering if there were guidelines around like when to participate or not. I've been in like an attachment theory training that was like, as a train the trainer, oh, don't like, probably if you're pregnant, you don't want to go through this because it's going to like bring up a whole lot for the people in the training when you're already like, how am I going to parent a kid? So I was wondering if there were like similar guidelines you had around participation in this group or other considerations in regards to like life circumstances.
Liz, thoughts?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking about sort of like the trauma informedness of the space in a sense. Well, people self-selected into the group. They knew what the purpose of the group was before they signed up, so they were aware like that we were going to explore writing as a tool for healing. We did have one participant that decided not to continue because he was not in a place where this was comfortable work for him to do. And so we just had conversations that made it okay to decide to opt out. I did not think specifically about things like, pregnancy, for example, because I felt like the people that chose to participate would participate because they were in a place where this felt like an important thing to be able to do.
Great, thank you. So I see one hand, and then that'll be our last question, and then we'll just wrap things up. So Lee, you've had your hand up.
Oh, hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, cool. I just want to thank everyone so much. I've been involved in a couple other support groups in my life. I even helped to write a law in Maryland that changed, helped open medical records a long time ago, and it actually passed. So it's just amazing to kind of meet this beautiful group of healing, badass people. And I guess I didn't even know exactly what I was doing tonight. So I have a lot of questions, but mostly I'm like, gosh, I want to see everyone here again. So like, is there either a support group here, or like even, I know a support group's hard to organize, but even just like a peer group, maybe I could even help start one on Facebook or an email or something. I just wanted to kind of ask that question and put that out there and just give you all like the biggest, most huge hug full of gratitude. Sorry, my video is not working. I don't know why. So.
Okay, thank you for being here. I had not thought about starting a Facebook group. Lots of us are in various adoptee only groups on Facebook, but I will consider starting a group. And I say that hesitantly only because I feel like I'm trying to not spend so much time on Facebook, but I do recognize the value of having a space. So I'm going to take that under consideration and stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, I could even organize like an email list if people just want to process for a few weeks here too, because I am already in some adoptee online Facebook, and I actually don't recommend you do that, Liz, because I feel like what you're doing is amazing, and you just said maybe you're doing too much. So I don't know. Like, thank you, but like, I don't know if anyone wants to talk just about tonight here. I'm here, and I put my email in there. I'll put it in there again.
Yeah, thanks, my email is on the handout that got posted in the chat, and I believe I put it in the chat. I'll put it there again, so folks can feel free to reach out to me with questions or comments, as things come up. Because also too, this kind of work sometimes sits with you, and something might come up for you in a couple of days or next week, and you might be like, oh. So I'm happy to. Oops, I just emailed the wrong. I just put my email in the wrong.
I mean, I don't want to step out of line because I'm only the chair of the conference, but it is my hope that this conversation around adoption and adulthood and needs of the community will be something that will be an ongoing thread for the Rudd Center on Adoption Research, that we'll be able to continue to explore, but also support, because for so long in practice, we have talked about adoption being lifelong, but we have dropped the conversation, as I had said earlier, pretty much after we're 20. So again, I encourage folks to stay connected to the Rudd Center, stay connected to Liz. It's rare to have a place where all of us can gather, and it's been amazing that such a space has been able to be created in the past year, and virtually too, so people could come and Zoom from Israel. So those are my final thoughts.
Yes, and I just want to kind of finish up here and say thanks to Liz. Obviously, it's so evident just how powerful and impactful this process was. And to the participants for your willingness to engage, right? I imagine just stepping in the room, quote unquote, took some courage. And you clearly were a support for one another. And I'm just so impressed with the whole process. I feel like I want to do a word cloud, because I heard so many words: vulnerable, strength, agency. And I feel like there was a process and that you've kind of moved along in your healing process. And just to listen to your stories, just how raw they were, and your willingness to be vulnerable with all of us and to share. It was just so generous of all of you. And I know I have been very moved by it. And I know I'm not alone. So thank you everyone for coming. I know we are past time, so thanks for hanging in, but it's just been so nice being with all of you.